Admiral Nathan Crowley smiled as the entire room laughed. The woman standing in front of him looked harmless enough. 5'6", plain uniform, contractor badge clipped neatly to her chest. She stood beside a drone control console worth millions of dollars, her hands resting calmly on the keyboard while some of the most elite operators in the United States military crowded around her. Crowley folded his arms. "Well?" he asked loudly. "I asked you a question. What's your rank?" More laughter followed. The Navy SEAL officers behind him exchanged grins. Lieutenant Derek Sloan laughed the loudest. To them, this was harmless entertainment. A contractor pretending she belonged in places reserved for warriors. The woman slowly turned her head. Her blue-gray eyes met Crowley's. There was no fear there, no embarrassment, no anger, only calm. "Higher than yours, sir," she said quietly. "You just don't know it yet." For 1 second, the room fell silent. Then the laughter exploded. Crowley threw his head back. "Oh, that's good." Someone slapped a table. Another officer nearly spilled his coffee. Even Sloan wiped tears from his eyes. The woman simply turned back to her console. No reaction. No attempt to defend herself. No explanation. And that was the first mistake they made. Because 3 months later, 4 United States generals would walk into that same room, and before speaking to anyone else, before questioning anyone, before looking at Admiral Nathan Crowley, they would raise their hands and salute the woman everyone thought was a nobody. By then, it would be too late. The investigation would already be complete. The traitors would already be exposed, and the ghost they thought was a contractor would finally reveal who she really was. Her name was Commander Vivian Mercer. Officially, she had died 2 years ago, but the dead sometimes come back, especially when justice still needs hunting. The morning sun rose over Pacific Sentinel Naval Station, painting the Hawaiian coastline in gold and orange. Inside the Skywatch Operations Center, Vivian Mercer sat alone in front of a wall of monitors, satellite feeds, drone telemetry, navigation systems. Everything appeared routine. That was exactly how she liked it. People rarely noticed, the quiet ones, and unnoticed people learned the most. She typed steadily while data scrolled across her screen. To anyone looking over her shoulder, she appeared to be running ordinary maintenance diagnostics. In reality, she was studying access records, patterns, timelines, small digital footprints left behind by people who believed nobody was watching. A voice interrupted her concentration. "Well, look at this." Vivian didn't need to turn around. She recognized the voice immediately. Admiral Nathan Crowley, the most powerful officer on the base, and one of the most arrogant men she had ever met. Crowley entered the control room surrounded by SEAL officers. Lieutenant Derek Sloan followed closely behind him. The younger officer practically worshipped Crowley. If the Admiral laughed, Sloan laughed louder. If Crowley criticized someone, Sloan joined in. The rest of the team followed the same pattern. Crowley stopped beside Vivian's workstation. "Morning, Miss Mercer." She looked up. "Good morning, Admiral." His eyes narrowed slightly. He hated her calmness. Most people became nervous around authority. Vivian never did. "What exactly are you working on?" "System diagnostics." "Interesting." Crowley leaned closer. "Funny how every time I see you, you're in places you probably shouldn't be." A few officers chuckled. Vivian remained silent. Crowley smiled. The smile never reached his eyes. "You know, Sloan and I were talking earlier." "That's so." "We were wondering how someone with no military background managed to get access to equipment most people spend years earning permission to touch." Sloan grinned. "Maybe she knows somebody important." The room laughed again. Vivian kept her expression neutral. Inside, however, memories surfaced. A convoy moving through a Syrian valley. Dust. Radio chatter. An explosion that turned daylight into fire. 13 operators. 11 dead. 2 survivors. The laughter around her faded beneath those memories. Then reality returned. Crowley was still talking, still enjoying the performance, still completely unaware that the woman he mocked carried more combat experience than half the people in the room combined. Across the room, Master Chief Owen Maddox watched quietly. Unlike the others, he wasn't laughing. His eyes remained fixed on Vivian, steady, observing. Noticing things that didn't fit, the way she sat, the way she scanned information, the way her breathing never changed under pressure. Crowley eventually grew bored. "Come on, gentlemen. Let's leave the contractor to her important work." More laughter followed as they exited. The room finally became quiet again. Vivian stared at her screen. A new entry had appeared in the access logs. Unauthorized activity. Small. Hidden. Easy to miss. Most people would have ignored it. She didn't. Because after 3 months on this base, her instincts were screaming the same warning. Someone inside Pacific Sentinel Naval Station was selling secrets, and she was finally getting close enough to make them nervous. Vivian Mercer spent the rest of the morning doing exactly what everyone expected her to do. She stayed quiet. She kept her head down. She acted like a contractor whose entire world revolved around maintenance reports and software diagnostics. It was the perfect disguise. People saw what they expected to see. That simple truth had protected her for 3 months. By lunchtime, the jokes had spread across most of Pacific Sentinel Naval Station. Lieutenant Derek Sloan had made sure of that. As Vivian entered Harbor Mess Hall carrying a tray, conversations lowered. Several sailors glanced toward her. A few smirked. One young officer whispered something to his friend. Both laughed. Vivian ignored them. She found an empty table near the far wall and sat alone. 2 tables away, Sloan was already entertaining a group of junior officers. Did you hear what she told the Admiral? More laughter. Someone repeated her words. Higher than yours, sir. The table erupted. Maybe she's secretly running the Pentagon. No, another officer joked. She probably thinks she's a general. General Contractor, Sloan replied. The nickname immediately caught on. Even louder laughter followed. Vivian continued eating. Each bite tasted like cardboard. Not because of the food, because the scene felt familiar, painfully familiar. 2 years earlier, she had sat with another group of soldiers. Different uniforms, different country, different mission. But the same laughter, the same friendships, the same trust. She remembered every face. 13 operators, brothers and sisters forged through deployments and combat. She remembered the convoy moving through Syria, dust clouds rolling behind armored vehicles, the crackle of radios, the jokes shared over the communication net, then the explosion. The world had disappeared beneath fire. Metal, blood, screaming, darkness. When she finally woke up weeks later in a secure military hospital, the first thing she saw was General Eleanor Blackthorne standing beside her bed. The general's expression had told her everything before a single word was spoken. The mission had been compromised. Someone had sold their route. Someone had known exactly where they would be. 11 operators never came home. Official reports labeled it an unfortunate ambush. Vivian never believed that. Neither had Blackthorne. That was the day Operation Iron Phantom was born, and the day Vivian Mercer officially died. A tray slammed onto the table across from her. The sound pulled her back to the present. Master Chief Maddox sat down. He looked uncomfortable, not because he feared her, because he was trying to understand her. You mind? Not at all. For several seconds, neither spoke. Finally, Maddox leaned back. You don't seem bothered by any of this. Any of what? The jokes. Vivian shrugged. People are entitled to their opinions. Most people would have snapped by now. Most people aren't me. That answer earned the smallest smile from him. No, Maddox admitted. They aren't. He studied her carefully. Ever serve? Vivian met his eyes. The question wasn't casual. It was deliberate. You already know the answer to that. Maddox remained silent. Neither confirmed anything. Neither denied anything. A strange understanding passed between them. Then his expression changed. He glanced toward Sloane's table. You know something? What? The loudest people are usually the ones who miss what's right in front of them. Vivian followed his gaze. Sloane was still laughing, still performing, still completely unaware of the storm forming around him. At that exact moment, a vibration touched Vivian's wrist, her watch. A secure signal, small, almost invisible. She looked down briefly. One new alert. Unauthorized access detected. Priority level elevated. Source unidentified. Her pulse remained steady, but inside, something shifted. Someone had just touched one of the files she had been quietly monitoring for weeks. Someone was getting nervous, and nervous people made mistakes. As Maddox stood to leave, he paused. Whatever game is being played here, he said quietly. Be careful. Vivian watched him walk away. Then she opened the alert. The unauthorized access wasn't random. It led directly toward records connected to Helix Defense Group, the same company appearing repeatedly in compromised operations, the same company hidden behind layers of shell corporations. For the first time in weeks, Vivian felt something close to certainty. The leak was real. The network was active. And somewhere inside this base, one of the people laughing at her might already know she was getting close. Far too close. That night, long after most of Pacific Sentinel Naval Station had gone quiet, Vivian Mercer sat alone inside the Skywatch Operations Center. The room glowed with the pale blue light of monitors. Outside, rain drifted across the Hawaiian coastline. Inside, servers hummed like distant engines. The overnight shift was always her favorite. Fewer people. Fewer distractions. Fewer opportunities for someone to look over her shoulder. Vivian stared at the access alert from earlier. The unauthorized user had entered the system for only 43 seconds. Not enough time to steal large amounts of information. More than enough time to verify whether a specific file existed. Someone had searched for records connected to Helix Defense Group. The same files Vivian had been quietly monitoring. The same files linked to multiple failed operations overseas. That was not a coincidence. She opened a secondary display and began tracing the digital footprint. The trail was partially erased. Professional work. Whoever had entered knew how to cover their tracks, but nobody erased everything. Nobody. A faint knock sounded behind her. Vivian instantly minimized the investigation screen. "Come in." The door opened. Chief Warrant Officer Grant Holloway stepped inside. He carried a maintenance tablet beneath one arm. His expression was unreadable. "Working late again? System updates." "Funny." Vivian looked up. "What is?" "You always seem to be updating systems whenever something unusual happens." For a moment, neither spoke. The silence stretched. Holloway finally stepped closer. "You know, most contractors don't know half the things you know." "Most contractors aren't me." That answer again. A slight smile touched his face. Not amusement. Frustration. 3 months, he said. 3 months watching you walk around this base. And nothing about you makes sense." Vivian leaned back. "Maybe you're looking too hard. Or maybe everyone else isn't looking hard enough." His eyes narrowed. "You know military communication protocols, publicly available information. You know authentication architecture, part of my job. You know operational terminology. I read manuals." Holloway laughed softly. "No, you don't." Vivian remained calm. Inside, she was evaluating every word, every movement, every possibility. Grant Holloway was not a stupid man. He never had been. That made him dangerous. "Who are you really?" he asked quietly. The question hung in the air. Vivian looked directly into his eyes. "Exactly who my identification says I am." Holloway studied her for several seconds, searching, calculating, trying to decide whether to push harder. Finally, he exhaled. "Right." He turned toward the door, then stopped. "One piece of advice." Vivian waited. "Whatever you're doing, be careful." His voice had changed. The suspicion was still there, but now something else existed beneath it. Concern. People around here don't like surprises. With that, he left. The door closed. Vivian stared at the empty doorway. Then she reopened the hidden investigation files. Her watch vibrated once. A secure notification. Priority transmission. She entered an encrypted authentication sequence. A hidden message appeared. "Yes, update requested. Operation Iron Phantom." She immediately connected through a secure channel buried inside routine network traffic. To anyone watching, it looked like software synchronization. In reality, it was a classified dead drop. Vivian uploaded everything. Access records, authentication anomalies, financial patterns, Helix Defense Group correlations, and one additional observation. Subject, Holloway. Not involved. Suspicious, but honorable. She transmitted the package. The encrypted upload disappeared into secure military systems that most generals didn't know existed. Somewhere far away, analysts would begin reviewing the data before sunrise. Vivian closed the connection. For a few moments, she simply sat there, thinking. Something felt wrong. Not with Holloway. Not with the investigation. Something larger. The pieces were beginning to fit together too quickly. Which usually meant one thing. The enemy had noticed her. As if confirming the thought, another alert suddenly appeared. This one wasn't hidden. This one was loud, visible. A file deletion. Someone had just erased 6 months of access records. Vivian immediately pulled backups. Too late. The originals were gone. Only fragments remained. Most people would have panicked. Vivian didn't. Instead, she smiled, a small smile. The kind predators wear when prey finally starts running, because innocent people rarely destroy evidence. Guilty people did. And tonight, for the first time in 3 months, someone inside Pacific Sentinel Naval Station had made a mistake. The first crack had finally appeared, and Vivian Mercer intended to tear it wide open. Vivian Mercer spent the next 48 hours doing something that seemed reckless. She stopped hiding. Not completely, just enough. For 3 months, she had moved through Pacific Sentinel Naval Station like a ghost. Invisible. Forgettable. Safe. Now she wanted attention. Because predators only revealed themselves when they believed their prey had become a threat. The deleted files from 2 nights earlier had confirmed what she already suspected. Someone inside the base knew an investigation was happening. Someone was actively destroying evidence. And that meant it was time to apply pressure. At 5:15 the following morning, Vivian entered the Skywatch Operations Center carrying a tablet and a cup of coffee. The overnight operator barely looked up. She sat down and intentionally accessed several archived system logs. Not secret files, not restricted material. Just enough activity to create a visible trail. Anyone monitoring the network would notice. That was the point. She spent the next 2 hours reviewing authentication records. By 7:30, her bait had worked. 3 separate users attempted to access the same hidden data repositories she had been monitoring. One immediately disconnected. Another copied records. The third tried deleting files. Again. Vivian carefully documented everything. The pattern was growing clearer. Whoever was behind the operation was becoming nervous. And nervous people made mistakes. Unfortunately, she wasn't the only one paying attention. Around midday, Commander Victor Langford appeared outside her workstation. The head of base security looked exhausted. Dark circles sat beneath his eyes. He carried a folder thick with paperwork. Miss Mercer. Vivian looked up. Commander, walk with me. Not a request, a command. Several nearby personnel immediately began watching, including Lieutenant Derek Sloan. His smirk suggested he thought trouble had finally arrived. Good. Let him think that. Vivian followed Langford across the base. The Hawaiian sun was brutal overhead. Heat reflected off concrete walkways. Aircraft roared in the distance. Neither spoke until they entered the security headquarters. Langford closed the office door, then tossed the folder onto his desk. It landed with a heavy thud. What exactly are you doing? Vivian sat calmly. That depends. On what? What you're asking. Langford stared at her. The patience in his face was running out. For the last week, you've appeared in 3 separate systems reviews. He opened the folder. Your name appears near every unusual network event we've recorded. Vivian glanced at the documents. Most were harmless. A few were interesting. 1 or 2 surprised even her. You investigating me? She asked. Maybe. Find anything? No. The answer frustrated him. That was obvious. Every background check. Every clearance review, every fingerprint verification, everything came back clean. Because Operation Iron Phantom had built one of the strongest cover identities ever created. People had literally died protecting it. Langford leaned forward. You know what's bothering me? Vivian remained silent. You never react. Should I? Most people get nervous during investigations. I'm not most people. The commander sighed heavily. He was beginning to sound like Holloway. Beginning to see the same inconsistencies. Who are you, really? There it was again. The question she heard more frequently every day. Vivian held his gaze. A contractor. Langford almost laughed. That's becoming harder to believe. For several seconds, neither moved. Then a security alert suddenly flashed on Langford's monitor. His attention snapped toward the screen. Vivian noticed the change instantly. The commander's face hardened. What happened? Langford read quickly, then looked at her. His expression had changed completely. Someone just tried accessing restricted procurement files. That's unusual. Those records connect directly to Helix Defense Group. Vivian's pulse remained steady. Inside, however, alarm bells were ringing. Helix again. Always Helix. The company kept appearing, like a shadow moving behind every compromised operation. Langford grabbed the phone, started issuing orders. Additional audits, system reviews, network lockdowns. Exactly what Vivian wanted. The trap was tightening. The pressure was increasing. And somewhere inside Pacific Sentinel Naval Station, a traitor was beginning to panic. Because every move they made to protect themselves was creating another trail, another clue, another mistake. By sunset, Vivian stood alone outside Falcon Ridge Housing Unit, watching the Pacific Ocean. Her watch vibrated. Secure message. One line appeared. Correlation confirmed. Helix Defense Group linked to multiple compromised operations. Vivian stared at the words, then at the ocean beyond. The investigation was no longer a theory. It was real. And whoever was responsible had just become far more dangerous than she originally imagined, which meant the next move would likely be theirs. And when it came, she intended to be ready. The attack came the next morning, exactly as Vivian Mercer expected. What she hadn't expected was how public it would be. Harbor Mess Hall was packed. More than 200 sailors, officers, pilots, maintenance crews, and support personnel filled the facility. The noise of conversations echoed from every direction. Breakfast trays clattered. Coffee machines hissed. For most people, it was just another ordinary day. For Vivian, it was the beginning of something much bigger. She entered carrying a tray and immediately noticed the atmosphere. People were watching her, not casually, intentionally. Word had spread. Something was happening. Vivian remained calm. She collected her breakfast and moved toward her usual table. Halfway there, a voice cut through the room. "Miss Mercer." Every conversation stopped. Vivian slowly turned. Admiral Nathan Crowley stood near the center of the dining facility. Several senior officers surrounded him. Lieutenant Derek Sloan stood nearby, wearing a grin he wasn't even trying to hide. Vivian placed her tray on the table. "Yes, Admiral?" Crowley didn't smile. That alone was unusual. "You and I need to discuss a serious matter." The room grew quieter. Sloan folded his arms, waiting, enjoying every second. Vivian looked at Crowley. "What kind of matter?" "Unauthorized access to restricted systems." A murmur spread through the crowd. Crowley took a step forward. "You've spent weeks accessing files beyond the scope of your authorization." Vivian remained expressionless. "That's a serious accusation. It's also true." "No," she replied calmly. "It isn't." Crowley's eyes narrowed. "You're denying it?" "I'm asking for evidence." The response irritated him immediately. Several officers exchanged glances. Crowley clearly expected fear. Instead, he found composure. "Evidence is being collected." "Then perhaps you should wait until it's collected." A few people looked uncomfortable, not because of Vivian, because she sounded reasonable. Crowley solved that problem by raising his voice. "Security!" The shout echoed through the dining hall. 4 military police officers entered moments later. The atmosphere changed instantly. Nobody laughed now. Nobody spoke. Everyone watched. Crowley pointed directly at Vivian. "This contractor has violated security protocols and compromised sensitive systems." The senior MP nodded. "Ma'am, please stand." Vivian stood calmly, slowly. The room watched every movement. "Turn around." She complied. The hand restraints clicked around her wrists. A few gasps sounded across the room. Someone near the back lifted a phone. Another person started recording. Within seconds, dozens of people were filming. Sloan looked openly satisfied. The expression on his face bothered Vivian more than the restraints. Not because she cared what he thought, because she remembered people like him. People who assumed guilt before facts. People who followed crowds instead of evidence. Crowley stepped closer. "You should have stayed in your lane." Vivian met his eyes. "Maybe." The answer confused him. He expected anger, resistance, fear. Instead, she looked almost disappointed, as if he had just confirmed something she already suspected. The MPs searched her belongings. Tablet, phone, access cards. Everything was collected. Everything except the watch on her wrist. Nobody noticed it. Nobody ever did. "Escort her to security processing complex," Crowley ordered. The senior MP hesitated. "Sir, detention requires formal—" "Are you questioning my order?" "No, sir." The MPs immediately moved. Vivian was escorted out of Harbor Mess Hall. The entire room watched. Some looked shocked. Others looked pleased. A few seemed ashamed. As they crossed the base, more people stopped to stare. Aircraft crews, engineers, pilots, maintenance teams. Everyone saw the contractor being marched away in restraints. Humiliation was the point. Crowley wanted the entire base to witness her downfall. Unfortunately for him, he misunderstood the situation completely. Because while everyone else saw a defeated contractor being arrested, Vivian Mercer was silently counting minutes. Every second she spent in custody moved events closer to activation. Closer to the protocols she had prepared 3 months earlier. Closer to the moment the hunters became the hunted. As security processing complex came into view, she glanced briefly at her watch. The display showed a time she knew by heart. Her scheduled check-in was approaching, and if she missed it, everything would change. The metal doors opened. The MPs guided her inside. The trap had finally closed. The only question remaining was who had actually been trapped. Detention Chamber 7 was exactly what Vivian Mercer expected. Cold, gray, forgettable. The concrete walls had been painted so many times that the layers were beginning to crack. A narrow metal bench ran along one side of the room. A small reinforced window sat high enough to show nothing but a rectangle of sky. The heavy steel door closed behind her with a loud metallic clang. Then silence. Complete silence. Vivian sat down, crossed her hands, and waited. Most people would have been angry, humiliated, terrified. She felt none of those things. Because, unlike everyone else on Pacific Sentinel Naval Station, she knew something important. This was not the end of the operation. This was the beginning. Her watch displayed 15:14, 46 minutes until her scheduled check-in. If she failed to report by 1600, a series of automatic protocols would activate. Protocols created by people far above Admiral Nathan Crowley's pay grade. Protocols designed specifically for situations exactly like this. For 3 months, she had prepared for every possible outcome, including capture, including detention, including betrayal, especially betrayal. The door suddenly opened. Commander Victor Langford stepped inside carrying a thick file. The security chief looked exhausted. The last 48 hours had clearly taken their toll. He closed the door behind him and sat across from her. For several seconds, he simply stared, trying to understand, trying to solve a puzzle that refused to fit together. Finally, he opened the folder. Let's try this again. Vivian remained calm. Try what again? Who are you? There it was. The question everyone eventually asked. Holloway had asked. Maddox had wondered. Now Langford was asking directly. Vivian leaned back. A contractor. Langford laughed once. No humor. Just frustration. You know what's funny? What? I don't believe that anymore. Silence filled the room. Outside, distant aircraft engines echoed across the base. Inside, only the sound of Langford turning pages disturbed the quiet. You've passed every background check. He tapped the folder. Every clearance review. Another page. Every fingerprint scan. Another page. Every security audit. He looked up. Yet somehow you keep appearing near every major anomaly we've found. Vivian said nothing. Langford opened another document. This morning we discovered additional unauthorized access attempts tied to Helix Defense Group. Vivian remained expressionless. Inside, however, her attention sharpened. Interesting, she said. You don't seem surprised. Should I be? The commander ignored the question. Instead, he pulled out several printed reports. These logs show someone accessed procurement files connected to Helix. He pointed toward a highlighted section. Then somebody attempted to erase the activity. Vivian glanced at the documents. The same pattern again. Access. Deletion. Panic. The network was becoming increasingly desperate. That was dangerous. Desperate people made mistakes, but they also became unpredictable. Langford studied her carefully. You know what I think? Vivian waited. I think somebody inside this base is hiding something. That's possible. I think that somebody is either you, he paused, or the people trying to frame you. For the first time, Vivian felt a small amount of respect for him. Victor Langford was finally asking the right questions. The problem was that he still didn't know how big the answers were. A vibration touched her wrist, tiny, almost invisible. The watch. Her eyes never moved toward it. Years of training prevented that, but she knew exactly what it meant. 15:37. 23 minutes until the first protocol activated. The countdown had begun. Langford continued speaking. You know something. Maybe. Then help me. For a moment, Vivian considered the request. Not because she couldn't answer, because she couldn't. Not yet. Commander, she said quietly, if you really want the truth. Langford leaned forward, then stopped looking at me. The words hit him harder than she expected. He sat motionless, thinking, processing, replaying everything that had happened over the last few weeks. Every accusation, every deleted file, every unusual event. And for the first time, genuine doubt appeared in his eyes. Not doubt about Vivian, doubt about everyone else. The door opened suddenly. A security officer rushed inside. Commander. Langford stood. What happened? We've got a problem. What kind of problem? The officer swallowed. Multiple network alerts just triggered simultaneously. Langford frowned. From where? The answer made the room go silent. Admiral Crowley's office. For the first time all afternoon, Vivian smiled, very slightly. The countdown was working, and somewhere on the base, someone was beginning to realize they had made a catastrophic mistake. Meanwhile, her watch quietly displayed a single number. 22 minutes remaining. Soon, everything would change. The moment everything changed began with alarms. Not loud alarms. Not the kind that sent people running. These were digital Alarms. Silent warnings spreading through secure military systems. Warnings that something hidden for months was suddenly coming into the light. Commander Victor Langford rushed from Detention Chamber 7 without another word. 2 military police officers remained behind with Vivian Mercer. For nearly 20 minutes, she sat alone, calm, patient, waiting. The watch on her wrist displayed 15:58, 2 minutes. Somewhere far beyond Pacific Sentinel Naval Station, encrypted servers were already responding to her missed check-in. Protocols were activating. Notifications were moving through classified channels. People with stars on their collars were receiving alerts. People most of the base didn't even know existed. At exactly 1600, her watch vibrated once. The signal was almost imperceptible, but Vivian felt it. Protocol activated. The first phase had begun. 3 minutes later, the steel door burst open. Langford appeared. Behind him stood 2 security officers. Both looked nervous, very nervous. Mercer? Vivian stood. Yes? You need to come with us. Am I under arrest? Langford hesitated. No. The answer surprised even him. Then what's happening? We have a situation. Vivian nodded. Lead the way. The group moved quickly through security processing complex. The atmosphere outside had changed dramatically. Personnel were rushing between buildings. Security teams were moving across the base. Several communication networks had been temporarily locked. People were asking questions. Nobody had answers. As they approached Skywatch Operations Center, Vivian saw military police positioned outside the entrance. Additional security. More than normal. Much more. Inside, the command center looked completely different than it had that morning. Every monitor was active. Data covered nearly every screen. File transfers, authentication logs, security alerts, financial records. The room felt less like a control center and more like a crime scene. Admiral Nathan Crowley stood near the main console. Lieutenant Derek Sloan stood beside him. Grant Holloway and Owen Maddox were already present. So was half the security division. The moment Vivian entered, dozens of eyes turned toward her. Crowley's expression hardened. There she is. Vivian remained silent. What did you do? The accusation came immediately. No greeting, no explanation, just blame. What are you talking about? She asked calmly. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Crowley pointed toward the screens. Every system on this base is flagging unauthorized activity. Then perhaps you should investigate it. The Admiral's face darkened. Before he could respond, one of the MPs stepped forward to reposition Vivian. His hand grabbed her arm, too quickly, too roughly. The fabric of her sleeve caught on a piece of equipment. Rip. The sound was small, but everyone heard it. The torn sleeve slid upward. For a brief moment, her left forearm was exposed, and with it, the tattoo. The room went silent. Not confused silence, not curious silence, a deeper silence. The kind that appears when people suddenly realize they have misunderstood something important. Master Chief Owen Maddox saw it first. His eyes widened instantly. Holy. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Maddox stepped closer, staring. That's impossible. Crowley frowned. What? Maddox didn't answer immediately. His attention remained fixed on the black and gray design. A trident, lightning bolts, numbers, unit markings, symbols invisible to civilians, recognizable only to a very small community. Finally, Maddox looked up. His voice had changed. That's not a tattoo anybody gets. Crowley laughed. It's a tattoo. No. Maddox shook his head slowly. It's a unit identifier. The room became even quieter. Grant Holloway stepped closer. What kind of unit? Maddox swallowed. Tier 1. The words hit the room like a shockwave. Several officers exchanged confused looks. Others immediately understood. Crowley's confidence wavered for the first time. That's ridiculous. Is it? Vivian calmly pulled her sleeve back into place. The motion was unhurried, controlled, deliberate. Almost as if she had expected this moment. Crowley pointed at her. Explain. Instead of answering, Vivian reached into her uniform pocket. Instantly, several MPs tensed. Hands moved toward sidearms. Years of training. Instinct. Vivian ignored them. Slowly, she removed a second identification card. Not the contractor badge. Something else. Something nobody on the base had seen before. A dark credential with classified markings. She handed it to Langford. Run it. The commander stared at the card, then at her, then back at the card. What is this? Proof. Nobody spoke as Langford approached a terminal. He scanned the credential. The system began processing. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 15 seconds. Longer than normal. Much longer. Then the screen flashed green. The first personnel file appeared, and every person inside Skywatch Operations Center immediately realized they had never truly known Vivian Mercer at all. Because the contractor standing before them didn't officially exist. Someone far more dangerous did. Nobody in Skywatch Operations Center spoke. Nobody moved. The room had become completely silent. Commander Victor Langford stared at the screen, his face slowly drained of color. The classified personnel file remained open in front of him. Every person in the room could see the first line. Commander Vivian Mercer. Updates? Active. Clearance? Restricted. Below that sat a service record so heavily redacted that entire sections appeared as black bars. But enough remained visible. Combat deployments, special operations assignments, decorations, classified commendations, and one detail that froze everyone. Officially declared killed in action. Lieutenant Derek Sloan took a step backward. No way. Master Chief Owen Maddox simply nodded. The tattoo, the composure, the breathing pattern. It all made sense now. Every strange detail suddenly fit together. Across the room, Admiral Nathan Crowley stared at the screen. Shock quickly became anger, then denial. This is fake. Nobody responded. It has to be fake. His voice grew louder. You don't just declare somebody dead and send them onto a military base. Vivian finally spoke. Actually, sometimes you do. Crowley turned toward her. For the first time since meeting her, he looked uncertain. Not intimidated. Not yet. But uncertain. What are you? The question sounded almost desperate. Vivian's expression never changed. Someone who was sent here to find out why American operators were dying. The room grew even quieter. Several officers exchanged nervous looks. Crowley's jaw tightened. You're accusing me? I'm observing facts. You have no facts. Vivian slowly looked toward the main system display. Then let's see. At that exact moment, one of the analysts suddenly raised his voice. Commander Langford! Everyone turned. The analyst pointed at the screen. New correlation report just finished. Data began flooding across the monitors. Authentication logs, financial records, system access reports, communication histories, thousands of entries, millions of data points. The software had spent hours connecting them. Now it was displaying the results. The first correlation appeared. Unauthorized file access. Source: Admiral Nathan Crowley. Several people shifted uncomfortably. Crowley's face darkened. Someone used my credentials. The analyst continued reading. Biometric confirmation. Silence. Fingerprint match. More silence. Retinal verification. Nobody spoke. The analyst swallowed. Multiple confirmed sessions. Crowley's explanation instantly weakened, but the system wasn't finished. Another window opened. Financial analysis. Shell companies. Offshore transfers. Corporate accounts. The room watched as one highlighted path connected directly to Helix Defense Group. Then another. Then another. The lines kept growing, like cracks spreading across glass. Victor Langford stared at the evidence. His expression became grim. How much? One analyst answered, over $8 million. Nobody laughed now. Nobody smirked. Nobody made jokes. The atmosphere felt completely different. Crowley looked trapped, cornered, dangerous. You're all making a mistake. His voice carried more emotion than before. This is manipulated. Is it? Vivian asked calmly. Crowley pointed toward her. You planted this. 3 months of financial records? You had access, not to your bank accounts. Several people looked away. The evidence was becoming impossible to ignore. Another alert appeared. The software had completed operational correlation. Every classified file Crowley accessed was now being compared against real-world mission outcomes. The percentage began climbing. 62%, 71%, 84%, 91%. Finally, it stopped. 94%. One analyst looked physically sick. Sir? Nobody answered. The analyst continued. Every major operation linked to those files was compromised within 72 hours. The words landed like a bomb. Nobody needed further explanation. They all understood exactly what that meant. Operators dead. Missions failed. Intelligence exposed. Lives destroyed. Crowley looked around the room, searching for support, finding none. Then something unexpected happened. The building trembled slightly. A low vibration rolled through the floor. Several people turned toward the windows. What was that? Another vibration followed, louder this time. Then came the sound. Rotor blades. Heavy rotor blades. Not one helicopter. Several. approaching fast. Everyone moved toward the glass. Outside, 4 Black Hawk helicopters descended through the afternoon sky. Military police exchanged nervous glances. Langford stared. Maddox stared. Even Sloan forgot to breathe. These were not routine transport aircraft. Everyone knew that. Crowley's face went pale, completely pale. For the first time, genuine fear appeared in his eyes. Vivian noticed immediately. Interesting. Because innocent people usually felt confused. Crowley looked terrified. The helicopters continued descending toward the base. Closer. 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 The operation was no longer local. The people above Crowley's level had arrived. And deep down, the Admiral knew exactly what that meant. The evidence wasn't ending. It was only beginning. As the first helicopter touched the ground outside, another alert appeared on the screen. A second name had entered the investigation. A much bigger name. The room stared at it. Nobody spoke. Because every person present understood one terrifying truth. Nathan Crowley might not be the top of the network. He might only be the first domino, and someone far more powerful was about to fall next. The Blackhawks had barely stopped moving when the first passengers stepped onto the tarmac. Everyone inside Skywatch Operations Center watched through the windows. No one spoke. No one needed to. The stars on the arriving uniforms said enough. General officers. Not 1, not 2, 4. The mood inside the room shifted instantly. Nathan Crowley's face had already gone pale, but now he looked like a man watching his own funeral. Victor Langford stared through the glass. Grant Holloway folded his arms. Derek Sloan looked completely lost. And Vivian Mercer simply stood where she was, calm, patient, waiting. The way she had been waiting for 3 months. The doors to the operations center opened several minutes later. Military police entered first, then security personnel, then 4 generals. At their center walked General Eleanor Blackthorne, silver hair, sharp eyes, perfect posture. The kind of presence that made entire rooms instinctively stand straighter. Every officer inside the building immediately snapped to attention, Crowley included. The room became silent, completely silent. Blackthorne stepped forward. Her gaze swept across the room, past Langford, past Holloway, past Sloan, past Crowley, and finally stopped on Vivian. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Years of military conditioning told everyone exactly how this moment should unfold. The generals should question the contractor, demand answers, take control. Instead, something completely different happened. General Blackthorne raised her hand and saluted. Gasps echoed throughout the room. Actual gasps. Several people looked around to make sure they had seen correctly. Then the other 3 generals raised their hands as well. 4 simultaneous salutes, directed toward the woman everyone had mocked, toward the contractor, toward Vivian Mercer. Derek Sloan felt his knees nearly give out. The room seemed to spin. Every joke, every insult, every rumor, every assumption. All of it crashed into him at once. Master Chief Owen Maddox slowly smiled, not because he was surprised, because he finally had confirmation. He had known something was wrong from the beginning. Now he knew exactly what. Vivian returned the salute. Her posture changed, subtly, completely. The contractor disappeared. The officer emerged. The room saw it instantly. The confidence, the authority, the command presence. It had been there all along, hidden beneath layers of patience and discipline. General Blackthorne lowered her hand. Commander Vivian Mercer. Her voice carried throughout the room. Welcome back. Crowley's eyes widened. Back. Not welcome. Not identify yourself. Not explain yourself. Welcome back. The implication hit everyone simultaneously. This wasn't a civilian. This wasn't even a contractor. This was someone operating at a level most of them would never understand. Thank you, ma'am, Vivian replied. Blackthorne nodded once. Then her attention shifted toward Crowley. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Admiral Nathan Crowley. Crowley swallowed. General, you are hereby relieved of command pending investigation into unauthorized disclosure of classified information, conspiracy, and violations of federal law. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Crowley looked around desperately, looking for support, finding none. The military police stepped forward. For the first time in his career, Nathan Crowley appeared genuinely afraid. This is based on incomplete evidence. No, Blackthorne said coldly. It is based on 3 months of direct observation conducted by one of our most effective operators. She gestured toward Vivian. The evidence is extensive. Victor Langford opened additional reports. Financial transfers, authentication records, communications. Everything continued pointing toward Crowley. The case was overwhelming. Then another screen activated. General Marcus Voss. The second name. The room went still again. Even Blackthorn's expression hardened. Vivian stepped forward. General Voss authorized my deployment. Nobody interrupted. He also approved multiple investigations connected to this case. More silence. And every time investigators got close to Helix Defense Group, the investigations disappeared. The implications settled over the room like a storm cloud. Crowley wasn't the architect. He was part of the network. A piece. A powerful piece, but still only a piece. Blackthorn stared at the reports. Can you prove it? Vivian met her eyes. Yes. The answer came without hesitation, without uncertainty, without fear. Then she handed over a secure tablet, the real tablet. Not the one security had confiscated, the one hidden beneath 3 months of deception. Everything is there, she said. Financial records, communications, access logs, Helix connections, internal coordination. Blackthorn reviewed several pages. Her expression never changed, but everyone could see it. The evidence was real. General Marcus Voss was involved, and the conspiracy was larger than anyone had imagined. Nathan Crowley lowered his head, defeated. Broken. Finished. Military police secured his sidearm, placed restraints on him, then began escorting him toward the exit. Before leaving, he looked at Vivian one final time. How long? Vivian understood the question. How long had she been hunting him? How long had she known? How long had she been pretending? Her answer was quiet, but every person in the room heard it. Since Syria. Crowley's face fell because he suddenly realized something terrible. The woman he had mocked wasn't investigating him for 3 months. She had been hunting the people responsible for killing her team for 2 years, and she had finally caught one of them. But as the doors closed behind Crowley, everyone understood the same thing. The hunt wasn't over, not even close. By midnight, Pacific Sentinel Naval Station felt like an entirely different place. The rumors had already spread. The contractor wasn't a contractor. The woman everyone mocked wasn't a civilian. The quiet technician who spent 3 months eating alone in Harbor Mess Hall had been one of the most highly classified operators in the United States military. People whispered her name in hallways, in offices, inside barracks, inside command centers. Each version of the story grew larger, more dramatic, more unbelievable. Yet somehow the truth remained more incredible than any rumor. Commander Vivian Mercer was alive, and Admiral Nathan Crowley was in custody. But Vivian knew something most people didn't. The story wasn't over, not even close. Late that evening, she returned to Falcon Ridge Housing Unit for what would likely be the last time. The room looked exactly the same. A narrow bed, a metal desk, a single lamp. 3 months of her life reduced to a temporary assignment and a handful of personal belongings. She closed the door behind her. For the first time all day, silence surrounded her. No investigations, no briefings, no accusations, no pretending. Just silence. Vivian sat on the edge of the bed and allowed herself 60 seconds. 60 seconds without being an operator, without being a ghost, without carrying the weight of 11 fallen teammates. 60 seconds to simply exist. Then a knock sounded. She already knew who it was. Come in. The door opened. Lieutenant Derek Sloan stepped inside. He looked nothing like the man who had laughed at her weeks earlier. The confidence was gone. The arrogance had disappeared. Only embarrassment remained. Ma'am? Vivian nodded. Sloan. The lieutenant stood awkwardly for several seconds, searching for words, finding none. Finally, he exhaled. I came to apologize. Vivian said nothing. Sloan continued. I judged you. His eyes lowered. I mocked you. Another pause. I helped turn you into a joke. The room became quiet again. Then Sloan looked directly at her. For the first time since they met, he truly saw her. Not the contractor, not the target, not the outsider, the person. I was wrong. Vivian studied him carefully. There was no excuse in his voice, no attempt to defend himself, only honesty. That mattered. You followed your commanding officer, she said. That doesn't excuse it. No, it doesn't. Sloan nodded slowly. The answer clearly hurt. Then how do I fix it? Vivian leaned back slightly. You remember this feeling. He frowned. This feeling? The moment you realized you were completely wrong about someone. The lieutenant listened carefully. Next time you meet somebody who doesn't fit your expectations, Vivian's voice remained calm. Ask questions before making assumptions. Sloane nodded. Look closer. Another nod. Think for yourself. Yes, ma'am. That's how you fix it. For the first time all evening, a small amount of tension left his shoulders. Thank you, ma'am. He saluted. Vivian returned it. Then Sloane quietly left. The room fell silent once again. A few minutes later, her secure tablet vibrated. One message. Priority classification. Vivian opened it. The screen filled with updates. Crowley's arrest. Financial seizures. Search warrants. Investigation spreading across multiple installations. Helix Defense Group under federal review. The first dominoes were falling. Then another message arrived. Different sender. Unknown origin. Vivian immediately focused. The subject line contained only 2 words. Outpost Raven. Her pulse slowed, not fear. Focus. She opened the attachment. An image appeared. A grainy surveillance photograph from Syria, 2 years old. The convoy route. The same route that had become a kill zone. The same route where 11 operators died. The image contained coordinates, vehicle positions, timing markers. Someone had documented the entire ambush. Then Vivian noticed something else. A figure, barely visible, standing on a rooftop overlooking the convoy. Watching, waiting, observing. Someone had been there. Someone had known exactly what was going to happen. Someone had watched her team drive toward death. Vivian zoomed in, the image distorted, pixels blurred, but one detail remained visible. A ring. Military issue. A specific design. Vivian stared at it. Her breathing stopped for half a second because she recognized it. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. The ring belonged to a man officially listed as dead. A man who should not have been alive. A man connected to events that nobody had ever fully explained. The room suddenly felt colder, much colder. 3 months ago, this mission had been about finding a leak. Now it was becoming something else entirely. Something bigger. Something darker. The network surrounding Crowley and General Marcus Voss reached further than anyone suspected. Even General Eleanor Blackthorne, even the analysts, even the investigators. Vivian saved the image, encrypted it, then created a new operational file. Mission status, active. CERT network, unknown. She stared out the window. Beyond the darkness, waves rolled across the Pacific Ocean beneath a sky filled with stars. Somewhere, people were celebrating Crowley's arrest. Somewhere, investigators were building cases. Somewhere, traitors were becoming nervous. And somewhere, the person responsible for Syria was still alive, still hiding, still believing they had escaped justice. They were wrong. Vivian Mercer had spent 2 years hunting ghosts. Tomorrow, she would become one again. The war wasn't over. It had only entered its next chapter. And this time, she was coming for everyone.